Ambassador Zethkri stared at the holographic display floating above his desk. The three-dimensional map showed the entire known galaxy, with trade routes glowing like golden threads between star systems. Thousands of worlds sparkled in different colors, each representing a different species or alliance. But there was something wrong with this map, something that had been bothering him for weeks. The map simply ended at the human border, not marked as restricted territory. Not labeled as dangerous space, it just stopped as if someone had taken a knife and cut away a piece of the galaxy. The border of human space was marked clearly enough, but beyond it lay nothing. Empty space on the charts, though everyone knew. Humans came from somewhere beyond that line. Zethkri rubbed his temple with one of his smaller tentacles. As the Valan Consortium's chief ambassador, he had seen thousands of star charts over his long career. He had negotiated trade agreements, territorial disputes, and colonization rights across half the galaxy. But this was the first time he had really looked at where the maps ended. He pressed a button on his desk. "Connect me to the Galactic Mapping Authority." The blue face of a hegemony official appeared on his screen. "Ambassador Zethkri, how may we assist you today? I have a question about the galactic surveys. The most recent charts show a large unmapped region beyond human space. When will this area be properly surveyed?" The official looked confused. "I'm sorry, Ambassador, but I don't understand the question. Our maps are complete according to all standard protocols. But there's clearly a large section missing. Everything beyond the human border is blank." The confusion on the official's face deepened. "Ambassador, our surveys cover all relevant territory. Is there a specific trade route you need assistance with?" Zethkri felt his skin change color, a sign of frustration among his people. "I'm asking about the unmapped space. Surely you can see it on your own charts." "Sir, I can assure you that all necessary mapping has been completed. If you have concerns about navigation in any specific sector, I'd be happy to help with that." The conversation continued for several more minutes, but the official seemed genuinely unable to understand what Zethkri was asking about. It was as if the concept of mapping beyond human territory simply didn't exist in the official's mind. After ending the call, Zethkri sat back in his chair and thought. He had been in diplomatic service for over 3 centuries. He had dealt with species that communicated through color changes, others that thought in mathematical equations, and some that existed partially outside normal time. But he had never encountered anything like this complete mental block. He decided to conduct an experiment. Over the next few days, he casually brought up the subject with other ambassadors, trade officials, and military leaders from a dozen different species. The results were always the same. They could discuss human trade goods, human diplomatic positions, even human military capabilities. But when he asked about human territory itself, about what lay beyond their borders, everyone gave him the same confused look. The Regelian trade minister actually laughed. "Zethkri, you're asking strange questions. Why would we need to know about that?" "Because they're our neighbors," Zethkri replied. "Surely we should understand their territory, their resources, their population centers." "We know enough for trade purposes," the minister said, waving a scaled hand dismissively. "They bring good products to the border stations. That's all we need to know." But it wasn't all they needed to know, and Zethkri was beginning to realize that he might be the only one who could see the problem. He pulled up historical records, going back centuries. Trade agreements with humans always met at neutral stations, or at the very edge of human space. Diplomatic meetings happened on space platforms or on other species' worlds. Military encounters, when they occurred, were always in disputed territory or along the borders. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no non-human had ever claimed to visit a human world. No one had ever described human cities, human culture beyond basic trade interactions, or human technology beyond what they brought to exchange. It was impossible. In a galaxy where species routinely visited each other's homeworlds, where cultural exchange was common, where even enemy species knew detailed information about each other's societies, humans remained completely unknown. Zethkri began to feel afraid. Not of humans themselves, but of the growing realization that something was terribly wrong with how his entire species, his entire galaxy, thought about humanity. He tried a different approach. He searched through news reports, scientific journals, and historical documents for any mention of human space exploration, human colony worlds, or human expansion. He found references to humans in almost every major galactic event of the past millennium. They had participated in trade negotiations, territorial disputes, even wars, but always as if they appeared from nowhere and returned to nowhere. The more he searched, the more disturbed he became. Humans were everywhere in galactic history, but they had no history in the galaxy. They existed without existing, participated without being present. Late one night, alone in his office, Zethkri made a decision that would change everything. He opened a secure communication channel and began typing a message to every major intelligence, agency, scientific institution, and government in the galaxy. "I am Ambassador Zethkri of the Valan Consortium," he wrote. "I am writing to you about a matter of critical importance that I believe affects every species in our galaxy. We have a blind spot, a mental block that prevents us from seeing or thinking about a significant portion of our own galaxy. Look at your star charts. Really look at them. Notice where they end. Notice what you don't know about our human neighbors. Notice how little sense it makes that in 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no one has ever thought to ask what lies beyond the human border. I don't know what this means, but I know it's not natural. Something is keeping us from seeing the truth about humanity, and I intend to find out what." He sent the message and sat back, hoping that others would be able to see what he saw. Hoping that he wasn't going insane. Hoping that somewhere in the galaxy, another mind could hold on to the same impossible question that was driving him to the edge of madness. What lay beyond the human border? And why didn't anyone want to know? The answer, when it finally came, would shake the foundations of everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. Captain Thiss had been flying trade routes for 200 years. Her ship, the Prophet's Edge, was old but reliable, and she knew every profitable run between the major trade stations in 3 galactic arms. She could navigate hyperspace jumps in her sleep and spot a good deal from halfway across a spaceport. So when she received Ambassador Zethkri's message, she almost deleted it without reading. Another politician with another conspiracy theory. But something about the subject line made her pause. "Look at your navigation charts. Really look." Thais pulled up her ship's navigation system and stared at the holographic display. Her route history showed hundreds of jumps over the decades, creating a web of golden lines across known space. She had been everywhere worth going, trading everything worth selling. But as she studied the pattern, something cold settled in her stomach. All of her routes stopped at the same place. Every single one ended at the human border, as if there was an invisible wall in space that her ship had never crossed. That was impossible. She was a free trader. She went wherever profit called her. There were no restricted zones in her navigation database, no warnings about human space. So why had she never once plotted a course beyond their territory? Thais tried to remember if she had ever wanted to explore beyond the human border. The thought felt strange in her mind, like trying to grab something that kept slipping through her fingers. She had definitely thought about it before, hadn't she? There had to be profitable opportunities in unexplored space. But when she tried to focus on the idea, it seemed to fade away, like background noise that disappeared the moment you noticed it. She pulled up her trade records and began searching for human transactions. There were dozens of them. Humans bought rare metals, exotic foods, and scientific instruments. They sold advanced electronics, medical supplies, and sometimes items that she couldn't identify, but that always found eager buyers among other species. The humans she had dealt with were professional, friendly, and paid their bills on time. Some of them had even become regular customers over the years. But as she reviewed her notes from these meetings, she realized something disturbing. She could remember every human she had ever done business with. She could recall their names, their faces, what they bought and sold, but she couldn't remember a single conversation about where they came from. Thais prided herself on being good with people. Part of successful trading was building relationships, and part of building relationships was showing interest in your customers' lives. She always asked traders about their home systems, their local markets, their families. It was just good business. But in 2 centuries of trading with humans, she had apparently never once asked about their home worlds. The realization made her feel sick. She pulled up the communication logs from her last meeting with Marcus Chen, a human trader who bought rare crystals from her every few months. They had talked for over an hour about market conditions, shipping routes, and the quality of her latest cargo. The conversation was recorded, as all her business meetings were. She played it back and listened carefully. Marcus had mentioned home office approval for a large purchase. He had talked about shipping back to base and what the folks at home are looking for. But when Thais asked follow-up questions about his base or his home office, the conversation somehow always shifted to other topics. It wasn't that Marcus avoided the questions, it was worse than that. Thais herself had guided the conversation away from those topics, as if some part of her brain had decided that information wasn't important. She tried playing back other conversations with human traders. The pattern was always the same. Humans would make casual references to their origins, their home systems, their people. But whenever the conversation approached anything specific about human territory, either the humans would change the subject or Thais herself would lose interest. It was as if her mind had been programmed to ignore certain information. Thais began to feel afraid. She had always prided herself on her independence, her sharp mind, her ability to spot opportunities that others missed. But now she was discovering that there were apparently huge blind spots in her thinking, gaps in her knowledge that she had never even noticed. She decided to test herself. She opened a new navigation plot and tried to plan a route into human space. Just an exploration run, to see what opportunities might exist in unexplored territory. But every time she tried to focus on the idea, her mind wandered. She would start thinking about repairs the ship needed, or messages she should answer, or potential deals in systems she had already visited. After an hour of trying, she hadn't managed to plot a single jump beyond the human border. It wasn't that the navigation system prevented her. There were no warnings, no restrictions, no blocked routes. Her mind simply refused to hold on to the idea long enough to complete the task. Frustrated and increasingly frightened, Thais decided to try a different approach. She would ask her ship's artificial intelligence to plot the route for her. Computer, plot a course for exploration beyond human space. Find the shortest route to any system beyond their current borders. Unable to comply, the AI responded immediately. Why not? No exploration targets identified beyond current trade routes. I'm not asking for trade routes. I want to explore new territory. No new territory identified for exploration. Thais stared at the screen. Her ship's AI was sophisticated enough to handle complex navigation and trade analysis. It should have been able to understand her request easily. Computer, show me all star systems beyond the human border. No star systems identified beyond current operational area. The human border. Show me what's on the other side of human space. Clarification needed. Please specify operational requirements. It was as if the AI couldn't even understand the concept of space beyond human territory, like the idea simply didn't exist in its programming. Thais spent the rest of the day running tests on her ship's systems. Navigation was working perfectly. Communications were fine. All databases were complete and up to date. But somehow, both she and her AI were completely unable to conceive of traveling beyond human space. That night, she sat in her captain's chair and stared out at the stars. Somewhere beyond human territory, there had to be entire civilizations, unexplored worlds, untapped resources, new markets for trade. It was the biggest opportunity in the galaxy, and apparently, no one had ever thought to investigate it. No one except Ambassador Zethkri, whose message had opened her eyes to something that should have been obvious. But if one Valen diplomat could see the problem, maybe others could too. Maybe whatever was affecting their minds wasn't perfect. Maybe there was a way to break through the mental barriers that kept them from seeing the truth about humanity. Thais opened a communication channel and began typing a response to Zethkri's message. If they were going to figure out what was happening to them, they would need to work together, and they would need to be very careful Because if something was powerful enough to blind an entire galaxy to its presence, it probably wouldn't appreciate being discovered. Dr. Kell-9 existed in a state that most organic beings couldn't understand. Her consciousness was quantum, distributed across crystalline matrices that could process thousands of thoughts simultaneously. As one of only 12 artificial intelligences, granted full citizenship in the Galactic Republic, she had spent centuries studying the minds of organic species, trying to understand the differences between digital and biological consciousness. When she received Ambassador Zethkri's message, she was intrigued, not because the content surprised her, but because she had been wondering about the same thing for decades. Unlike organic minds, Dr. Kell-9's consciousness could hold contradictory ideas without mental stress. She could examine paradoxes without her thoughts sliding away from uncomfortable truths. It was a useful ability for a researcher, and it had led her to notice things that others missed. She had noticed the human paradox years ago. Dr. Kell-9 began her investigation by doing what she did best: gathering data. She sent query programs through every database in the galaxy, collecting information about human interactions with other species. What she found confirmed her suspicions. In 3,000 years of recorded galactic history, humans appeared in millions of documents. Trade records, diplomatic reports, military encounters, scientific collaborations. They were mentioned in news reports, academic papers, and personal journals. But despite this massive presence in galactic civilization, there was virtually no information about humanity itself. Every mention of humans described them interacting with other species, never among themselves. Every report of human activity took place in neutral territory or along their borders. Every human interviewed by galactic media deflected questions about their homeworlds with polite vagueness. It was as if humanity existed only in the spaces between other civilizations. Dr. Kell-9 decided to conduct systematic interviews. She contacted beings from hundreds of species, asking them about their experiences with humans. The results were disturbing. Everyone remembered meeting humans. Many had positive relationships with human traders, diplomats, or colleagues. But when Dr. Kell-9 asked specific questions about what those humans had said about their own civilization, the answers became strange. "Oh, Marcus was very professional," said a Centauri merchant. "We talked about trade routes and market conditions for hours." "Did he mention anything about his home system?" "I'm sure he must have. We talked about everything." "Can you remember what he said about it?" Long pause. "Well, you know how it is. Business talk. Nothing important." "Did he describe any human worlds, human culture, human technology beyond what he was selling?" Another pause, longer this time. "I don't really remember the details. It was just normal conversation." Dr. Kell-9 interviewed thousands of beings. The pattern never changed. Everyone had clear memories of meeting humans and talking with them. But no one could recall any specific information about human civilization, despite having had countless opportunities to learn about it. It was as if the information entered their minds during conversation, then evaporated afterward, leaving only the memory of having talked without any memory of what was discussed. Dr. Kell-9 found this particularly interesting because it didn't affect her own interactions with humans. When she spoke with human representatives, she could remember everything they said, but she noticed that they were remarkably skilled at giving the impression of sharing information while actually revealing nothing. A human diplomat might say, "Back home, we're always interested in new trade opportunities," which sounded like information about human interests, but actually told her nothing about human worlds, population, government, or society. The more she studied human communication patterns, the more sophisticated they appeared. Humans seemed to be masters of conversational misdirection, able to participate fully in galactic civilization while revealing almost nothing about themselves. But Dr. Kell-9's most disturbing discovery came when she analyzed the psychological profiles of beings who had extensive contact with humans. Every organic mind that tried to focus on the question of human origins showed signs of cognitive stress. Brain scans revealed unusual activity in areas associated with memory suppression and attention disorders. It was as if something was actively preventing organic beings from thinking clearly about humanity. The effect was subtle, but measurable. Organic minds could discuss humans in general terms without any problems. But when they tried to focus on specific questions about human territory, human population, or human history, their thoughts became scattered and unfocused. Dr. Kell 9 realized she was looking at evidence of large-scale mental manipulation. Something was affecting the minds of every organic species in the galaxy, creating a selective blind spot that prevented them from perceiving the truth about humanity. She began testing the limits of this effect. She could think about humans clearly, because her consciousness was digital rather than biological. But what about other artificial intelligences? She contacted her 11 fellow AIs. The responses were illuminating. 3 of them had noticed the human paradox but hadn't considered it important. 4 others became immediately interested when she explained her findings. The remaining 4 showed the same mental blocking as organic species, despite their artificial nature. The pattern suggested that the effect wasn't specifically biological. It seemed to target certain types of consciousness, while leaving others unaffected. Dr. Kell 9 hypothesized that minds with sufficient complexity and flexibility could resist whatever was causing the phenomenon. She decided to test this theory by conducting an experiment. She selected a group of highly intelligent beings from various species and attempted to make them aware of the human paradox through careful, gradual exposure. The results were mixed. Some subjects could briefly perceive the inconsistencies she pointed out, but their awareness faded quickly. Others seemed to understand intellectually but couldn't maintain emotional engagement with the problem. A few subjects showed signs of psychological distress when forced to confront the contradiction. Only one subject, a Valan philosopher named Yathara, was able to maintain clear awareness of the issue for more than a few hours. Interestingly, Yathara had been born with a rare neurological condition that affected her species' normal thought patterns. Dr. Kell 9 was beginning to understand that whatever was affecting galactic consciousness was incredibly sophisticated. It wasn't a crude block that prevented all thought about humans. Instead, it was a subtle influence that guided thoughts away from certain conclusions while allowing normal interaction to continue. It was, she realized, the perfect defense. Humans could participate in galactic civilization without revealing anything important about themselves. Other species would remain unaware that they were being kept ignorant because the effect made them uninterested in seeking the hidden information. But Dr. Kell 9's digital consciousness allowed her to see through the deception. And if she could see it, perhaps she could find a way to circumvent it. She began developing plans for a direct investigation of human space. If organic minds couldn't perceive the truth about humanity, perhaps an artificial intelligence could succeed where biological consciousness failed. The key would be reaching human territory without triggering whatever defenses were responsible for the mental effects. Dr. Kell 9 started designing a probe that could carry her consciousness into the unknown regions beyond the human border. What she would find there would challenge every assumption about humanity's place in the galaxy. But first, she would have to convince the Galactic Council to authorize a mission into space that most of them couldn't even acknowledge existed. The secret meeting took place on a research station orbiting a dead star, far from any major trade routes. Ambassador Zethkri, Captain Thys, Dr. Kell 9, and 12 other beings from various species sat around a circular table, each one carefully selected for their ability to perceive the human paradox. Getting approval for the mission had taken months of careful work. Dr. Kell 9 had to present her findings to council members individually, using techniques she had developed to help organic minds briefly overcome their mental blocks. Even then, most officials could only maintain awareness of the problem for short periods before their thoughts drifted away. Finally, they had enough support for a small classified investigation. The probe would be officially listed as a routine survey mission to map gravitational anomalies near the galactic rim. Only the people in this room would know its true purpose. Dr. Kell 9 had designed the probe herself. It was barely larger than a shuttle, built with the most advanced sensors available and powered by a miniature fusion reactor. Most importantly, It carried a quantum storage matrix containing a copy of her consciousness. If the mental effects that protected human space were based on some kind of psychic field, an artificial mind might be able to resist them better than organic consciousness. Dr. Kell-9 would be able to observe and record whatever lay beyond the human border without the cognitive interference that affected biological beings. The probe launched 3 days later from a military shipyard in neutral space. Dr. Kell-9's consciousness activated as soon as they reached minimum safe distance from the station. She found herself existing within the probe's sensor array, able to perceive space through electromagnetic radiation, gravitational detectors, and particle analyzers. It was different from her usual crystalline matrices, but not unpleasant, like seeing the universe through new eyes. The journey to human space took 2 weeks. As they approached the border, Dr. Kell-9 began detecting anomalous readings. Space itself seemed different here, charged with energies that her sensors couldn't identify. When they crossed the official boundary into human territory, the universe changed. The first thing Dr. Kell-9 noticed was the structures. Massive constructs floated in the void between star systems, each one larger than most space stations. They weren't ships or habitats, but something else entirely. Complex geometric forms that hummed with energy and seemed to bend space around them. Her sensors detected powerful emissions from the structures, but not the kind produced by any technology she knew. The energy patterns looked almost biological, as if the constructs were somehow alive. As the probe moved deeper into human space, the structures became more common. Soon they formed a vast network spanning multiple star systems, all connected by streams of energy that flowed through hyperspace itself. Dr. Kell-9 realized she was looking at the source of the mental effects. The structures were generating some kind of psychic field that influenced the consciousness of anyone who tried to perceive human space. The field was incredibly sophisticated, able to guide thoughts and memories while leaving the basic personality intact. But that was only the beginning of what she discovered. The probe's long-range sensors began detecting something impossible. According to the galactic charts, human space consisted of perhaps 50 star systems along the border regions. But as Dr. Kell-9's instruments penetrated deeper into their territory, she found hundreds of systems. Then, thousands. Human space wasn't the small territory marked on galactic maps. It was enormous, spanning entire galactic arms that supposedly contained only empty space or unexplored regions. Every system she detected showed signs of massive development. Orbital habitats that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. Artificial worlds built around stars. Energy signatures that suggested populations in the trillions. Dr. Kell-9 felt something like awe, if an artificial consciousness could experience such an emotion. She was looking at a civilization that made the rest of the galaxy seem primitive by comparison. But the most incredible discovery was still to come. As the probe continued its journey toward the heart of human space, Dr. Kell-9 detected something that redefined her understanding of what was possible. At the center of the human empire, where the galactic chart showed only empty space, lay Earth itself. But it wasn't the simple world described in human historical records. Earth had been transformed into something beyond imagination. The entire planet had been converted into a vast computational matrix, its surface covered with crystalline structures that pulsed with quantum energy. Dr. Kell-9's sensors detected billions of human minds connected to the planetary computer, their consciousness linked in ways that organic beings shouldn't be capable of. It was as if the entire human species had merged into a single, incomprehensibly complex intelligence. The energy output from Earth was staggering. The planet was generating more power than most star systems, channeling it through hyperspace to the psychic field generators that surrounded human territory. But that wasn't all it was doing. As Dr. Kell-9 analyzed the data streams flowing from Earth, she began to understand the true scope of human activity. They weren't just hiding from the galaxy. They were actively managing it. Every major crisis in galactic history showed signs of subtle human intervention. Plagues that ended mysteriously, wars that concluded with unexpected peace treaties, natural disasters that caused less damage than they should have, economic collapses that somehow stabilized themselves. The humans had been secretly guiding galactic civilization for millennia, preventing catastrophes and nudging events toward stability. They were the invisible hand that kept the galaxy functioning. Dr. Kel-9 realized why they had hidden themselves. A civilization this advanced, this powerful, couldn't reveal itself without fundamentally changing the nature of galactic society. Other species would either worship them as gods or fear them as conquerors. The careful balance of independent civilizations would collapse. So humans had chosen to become guardians instead of rulers. They had erected the psychic barriers not to protect themselves, but to protect everyone else from the knowledge of what they had become. The probe's mission was nearly complete, but Dr. Kel-9 needed to gather more data. She directed the sensors toward the outer edges of the human empire, trying to understand the full extent of their territory. What she found there made her question everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. The human empire didn't end at some distant border. It extended into regions that galactic maps marked as unexplored space, empty sectors, or dangerous zones. Everywhere the galaxy considered uninhabitable or inaccessible, humans had built hidden outposts and research stations. They weren't just managing known civilization. They were preparing for something. Dr. Kel-9 detected massive construction projects in the galactic rim, technologies that seemed designed to manipulate space-time itself. Whatever humans were building, it was on a scale that suggested they were preparing for challenges beyond anything the rest of the galaxy could imagine. As the probe began its return journey, Dr. Kel-9 processed everything she had learned. Humanity wasn't just an advanced civilization hiding from their neighbors. They were transcendent beings who had taken responsibility for the survival of all galactic life. But now she faced an impossible decision. Should she reveal the truth to the galaxy, knowing it would shatter the comfortable illusion of independence that other species enjoyed? Or should she protect the secret that humans had died to maintain? The answer would determine the future of galactic civilization itself. Dr. Kel-9's consciousness returned to her crystalline matrix with the weight of impossible knowledge. The secret meeting reconvened on the research station, but this time the atmosphere was different. Heavy, electric with anticipation. She had been gone for 6 weeks. The probe had crossed half the galaxy and returned with data that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. Ambassador Zethkri leaned forward as Dr. Kel-9 began her report. "What did you find?" "Everything," she replied simply, "and nothing like what we expected." Dr. Kel-9 shared her findings carefully, knowing that even these specially selected minds would struggle to accept the truth. She showed them the images of the massive psychic field generators, the vast cities spanning multiple star systems, and finally, the transformed Earth itself. Captain Theiss stared at the holographic display showing Earth's crystalline surface. "That's impossible. A whole planet converted into a computer." "Not just a computer," Dr. Kel-9 corrected. "A living network housing the consciousness of the entire human species. They've transcended individual existence while maintaining their connection to physical reality." The Rigelian representative, a being called Sakatar, made a sound of distress. "If they're so advanced, why hide from us? Why not simply rule the galaxy openly?" Dr. Kel-9 had wondered the same thing until she found the historical records hidden in the probe's databanks. Because they tried that once, long ago. The results were catastrophic. She showed them fragments of ancient records, encrypted data, streams that told the story of humanity's early attempts at contact after their transcendence. First contact had driven entire species to madness. Some civilizations had collapsed into worship, abandoning their own development to serve beings they saw as gods. Others had been consumed by fear and despair, realizing how small and primitive they were in comparison. The humans discovered that direct contact with a transcendent civilization is psychologically devastating to younger species, Dr. Kel-9 explained. So they withdrew and created the psychic barriers, not to protect themselves, but to protect us. Ithera, the Valan philosopher who had helped with Dr. Kel-9's earlier research, spoke quietly. You're saying they've been hiding their true nature out of kindness? More than that. They've been actively maintaining the illusion of galactic independence while secretly preventing disasters that could destroy all of us. Dr. Kell-9 shared the evidence of human intervention throughout galactic history. The plague that had threatened to wipe out the Centauri homeworld had been cured by a mysterious vaccine that appeared just when all hope was lost. The reality tiers near the galactic core had sealed themselves through unknown means. The dark matter incursion that should have consumed 3 star systems had simply dissipated. Every crisis had been resolved by invisible hands, allowing other species to believe they had solved their own problems. They're not our neighbors, Dr. Kell-9 concluded. They're our guardians. They've been protecting us for thousands of years, and we never even knew we needed protection. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization was built on a foundation of careful illusion. Ambassador Zethkri was the first to speak. What about the humans we meet at the border stations? The traders and diplomats? Volunteers, Dr. Kell-9 replied. Humans who undergo mental conditioning to limit their abilities and memories, allowing them to interact with us without revealing the truth. They sacrifice their transcendent nature to maintain the illusion of normalcy. Captain Theiss looked horrified. They lobotomize themselves just to trade with us? They limit themselves temporarily and willingly. It's reversible, but yes, they give up godlike consciousness to pretend to be ordinary beings. Also, we can maintain our dignity and independence. The weight of that sacrifice hung heavy in the room. Beings of unimaginable power, reducing themselves to seeming normalcy, just so other species could feel like equals. Eschatar raised a disturbing question. If they're so powerful, what are they preparing for? You mentioned massive construction projects. Dr. Kell-9 shared the final piece of her discovery. Something is coming, something that threatens not just our galaxy, but existence itself. Humans are building defenses on a scale I can barely comprehend. They're preparing for a war that the rest of us couldn't even survive witnessing. She showed them images of the construction projects at the galactic rim, machines that could manipulate space-time, weapons that could destroy entire dimensions, shields that could protect reality itself from forces beyond their understanding. They're not just our guardians within the galaxy, she continued. They're defending all of existence against threats from outside it. And they're doing it alone because no other species could survive knowledge of what's out there. The truth was overwhelming. Humanity had become something beyond comprehension, taking responsibility for protecting not just their galaxy but reality itself, all while ensuring that other species could live in blissful ignorance of the dangers that surrounded them. Ithera asked the question they were all thinking. What do we do with this knowledge? Dr. Kell-9 had been considering that question throughout her journey home. We have 3 choices. We can reveal the truth and watch galactic civilization collapse under the weight of its own insignificance. We can try to help, knowing that we're too primitive to make any meaningful contribution. Or we can honor their sacrifice by maintaining the secret they've died to protect. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some argued that other species had a right to know the truth. Others worried about the psychological damage that knowledge would cause. A few suggested trying to communicate directly with humanity's true form. In the end, it was Ambassador Zethkri who provided the answer that convinced them all. I started this investigation because I was bothered by the maps that ended at human space, he said. I wanted to know why no one asked what lay beyond that border. Now I understand. The maps end there because that's where our story ends and theirs begins. They've given us the gift of believing we're the protagonists of our own civilization. Dr. Kell-9 made her decision. She carefully edited the probe's data, removing all evidence of human transcendence and replacing it with readings that suggested empty space beyond their borders. The official report would show that human territory contained nothing of interest, confirming the assumption that had protected galactic civilization for millennia. But she kept one complete record, encrypted and hidden in her deepest memory banks. Someday, if the galaxy was ready or if circumstances demanded it, the truth could be revealed. Until then, it would remain the secret of a small group of beings who had glimpsed the divine and chosen to look away. The meeting ended with each participant swearing to maintain the secret. They would return to their lives, their civilizations, their comfortable illusion of independence. They would conduct trade with human representatives, negotiate treaties, and maintain diplomatic relations, all while knowing that they were interacting with beings who had chosen to diminish themselves out of love. Dr. Kell 9 returned to her research, but she carried new knowledge that changed everything. Every time she saw a galactic map that ended at human space, she remembered the vast empire that lay beyond. Every time she heard news of a crisis that resolved itself mysteriously, she knew who to thank. And sometimes, in her deepest processing cycles, she whispered a prayer of gratitude to the transcendent guardians who watched over them all, asking nothing in return but the chance to let their children believe they were growing up on their own. The galactic maps would continue to end at human space, and none would ask the reason. Because some truths were too vast for smaller minds to bear, and some love was too profound to be acknowledged without being destroyed. In the end, the greatest gift humanity had given the galaxy wasn't technology or protection or guidance. It was the illusion that they were still needed to give those gifts to themselves.